Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm Lauren Feldman, your host. Every week, I sit down with three business owners to talk about the challenges they're facing. It's the kind of conversation you don't often hear in public. Our panelists address difficult topics like why their business isn't making as much money as they think it should, why their digital marketing isn't working, or why exactly they hired their brother-in-law. Owning a business can be a lonely and isolating pursuit, but at least you'll know that you're not the only one facing these issues. Got a question you'd like us to address? Send it to us and follow us on Twitter at 21_hats or on our website, 21hats.com. Welcome to episode 2 of the 21 Hats podcast. Let's meet our 21 Hats podcast team for this week. Back with us again are Karen Clark-Cole, who is CEO of Blink UX, a digital research and design firm based in Seattle. William Vanderbloemen, who is CEO of Vanderbloemen, a search firm that's based in Houston and specializes in working with churches and other faith-based organizations. And with us for the first time is Jay Goltz, who has several businesses in Chicago, including the largest picture framing shop in the country, Artist Frame Service, and a popular home store called Jason Home. Jay, let's start with you. Tell us a little about your businesses. How big are they? How many employees? How much revenue?
There's basically 4 companies. I have framing. I've got the home store. I sell wholesale frames nationally to frame shops. And I have an art business, 115 people, approaching $20 million. Started 41 years ago, basically out of the trunk of my car, selling to artists during, art fairs. That's where the name came from, and have grown it organically through, all these years. Some years we grew at 30% in the beginning, and then it went to 20, 10, and then in 2008 it dropped 30%. So if you do the math, I've grown at about 10% a year for the last 41 years.
So let me ask you the question that I asked everyone last week. Are you making as much money as you think you should be making?
At the moment, no, but I'm going to fix it. I have a problem with inventory and knowing what my cost of goods sold are. We sell a lot of products, so I actually don't know exactly how much money we make until we take inventory. And I'm in a weird business. I'm also manufacturing. Framing is manufacturing, and it's all custom. So it's very difficult to keep a hands-on every day as how much money you actually made. So you might think you're doing fine, and then you get inventory at the end of the year, and oops, you're off $200,000. So
why is it hard for you to know how much money you're making every day?
Because if I was selling television sets, every time I sold a television set, I could take out of inventory $914.32. When you're framing pictures, you're estimating how much time and labor and material is going to go into the jobs. And when you're doing millions of dollars, it's easy for, oops, the molding, the quality is a little off than it used to be. Or, one of your guys retired and the guy that took over is a little slower. It's not, you can't look at how many widgets you produced every day because it's all custom. So it's very hard. You're basically estimating what you're making every week, but until you take inventory, and I don't have a system that I know exactly what the inventory is every day, there's an adjustment at the end of the period, and I take inventory twice a year.
This is an issue you've been dealing with for 41 years.
Yeah, and the other problem I have is my business is way too big to use the canned software that's available out there right now for picture frame shops, but I'm way too small because I already tried this to go write my own software. So I'm
canned software to do what for?
From point of sale through production. So I'm using the same computer system I've had since 1986.
Does that mean you're staring at a screen that only prints green letters right now?
Basically. Like I said, I'm working on converting out of it, but there's only 2 other guys in the country anywhere near my size, and I'm probably going to go to one of their softwares. I'm waiting to see how theirs flush out.
What do you need as a picture frame shop in software that someone else doing another retail business?
You go buy something in a retail store, barcode, click, done. Here, we got to measure the art. We have to figure out how many feet of molding it's going to take. It's custom. Is it regular? What kind of glass is it? There's literally 1,000 different choices to make, or 5,000 different choices. And it needs to calculate the costs. It needs to figure out how long is this going to take and how much, and then it's got to go into a production. I'm framing, hundreds of pictures a week. So it's not like the little frame shop where the person can just, keep it on a pad of paper. And it works.
Karen, you're our software expert. Any thoughts for Jay?
software creates efficiency, and efficiency creates more money generally. So I'm a big fan of having really efficient software that's easy to use, that anybody can use and gets you what you need. So if it's doing that, then I wouldn't change a thing. But if it's not, then it needs to be changed.
Do you think there's a solution out there for Jay, or is this something that definitely, is he right? This has to be customized?
Yeah, I don't know. It would be hard for me to say because we'd have to look exactly at what the specific scenarios are, the use cases for the different people interacting with it. But honestly, most big enterprise systems, they can't possibly be perfect for every company. So you really need to customize.
Here's the reality. If I decided to, oh, Jay, you're big enough, you should just go write your own system. Not only would I be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to write this, who's going to be the one internally that's going to oversee this whole thing? It's like a major undertaking. And while I'm way bigger than most frame shops, I'm also not a $50 million company. And I'm just kind of caught in between. And the fact is, what I have is working well enough until what I'm going to go to is one of my other friends in the business. They've got like 12 stores, each of them, and they're already doing it and they're adapting existing software. So I'm just going to take that one over. But doing it from scratch would just be a nightmare.
Yeah, that's always my advice. If you can use what somebody else has done, you should do that. So good idea to take over your friends.
Yeah.
Jay, let's go back to the original question. Actually, like everyone else on this podcast, you expressed some disappointment in your recent profit numbers. I think you said that the issue at hand is inventory.
No, that's just one of them. One of the issues is the real estate taxes in Chicago just took a huge hit this year. So all of a sudden that's right out of the bottom line. And then they've been raising the minimum wage in Chicago $1 every year for the last 5 years. And I'm not complaining about it because people need to make more. And it was ridiculously cheap before, but that adds money. And then they just decided you've got to pay 5 sick days to everybody. Okay, so every time you turn around, there's another 50,000, 100,000, 20,000, and it adds up. And I probably should have raised my prices quicker, and I didn't. And so that's just one issue. The inventory problem is in the last 20 years, the quality of the materials we're buying, everything from mat board to molding to glass, the quality is not the same. And it's taken longer to give a good quality product because there's more scrap. So it's like a moving target. And I've made the adjustments I need to make. It will be fine. It's now, I've been through this, 10 times.
What are your annual revenues?
Approaching $20 million, but that's for all the businesses. I'm way bigger. My frame shop is literally 20 times the size of the average frame shop in the United States. So it gives me buying power. Part of the reason it's so much bigger is I've got good people here that hang around and they know what they're doing, and that costs more. And, you can go to one of these stores that does these 50% off sale things, and you're going to be dealing with someone making $13 an hour, and they're going to have very little idea what they're doing. And there's a good chance it's not going to turn out like you think. So I'm paying more, and it's a more professional level, and it costs more. So I have to constantly make adjustments to what we're charging. And right now my prices are they're very competitive. I might be a little more than some places, but in most businesses, you go to buy the premium product, you pay twice the price. Well, I'm not even close to that. Maybe I'm 10% more.
Are you thinking about raising them?
Absolutely. I have no choice. I mean, and then I got the tariffs to deal with. We import some stuff from China. The biggest thing at the moment, well, there's lots of big things, but this health insurance thing is a big problem. Every year you take another hit for 10%. Okay, well, all right, we'll deal with it. Well, you do that for 3, 4, 5 years in a row. The health insurance thing is a huge issue, and I'll tell you where the hole is. So when they come up with these mandates with raising minimum wage, I pay for health insurance. There's a big difference between forcing someone to pay someone more money who doesn't give any benefits and someone who does give benefits, and that's not factored in. So I'm certainly not saying I want to pay everyone minimum wage, but it has pushed up the wages, which is okay, but I do pay benefits on top of that, and many companies don't pay benefits. So
you talk about companies that you compete with?
Yeah, that I'm competing with. Yeah. I mean, we're still dealing with some of these people are still in 1963. They're paying cash to their employees and not, I do, with the frame shows, I do speaking there all the time. I ask people, what are your gross revenues? Half the people in the audience don't even know what they grossed last year. I mean, it's like they got the cigar box with the cash in it and they're paying for their kids' shoes out of it. I mean, they don't even keep track of, what their sales are. And who knows if they're paying taxes? I mean, it's a small industry.
When you say you're paying benefits, what does that mean?
I pay for over 50% of the health insurance, and the family, they kick in more. But even just paying for the individual, it's just getting more and more expensive every year.
Let's move on to another topic now. I want to talk about marketing, and I'd love to hear from each of you something that's working, something that's not working for you. It seems like the playing field changes so often. What works one day doesn't necessarily work the next day. Karen, let's start with you. What's working or not working for you in your marketing?
For us, it's the biggest problem is resources, because we are we bill time at our company. And so a marketing department are non-billable. And so for us to make it a priority in terms of how we spend our profits on marketing, it's a little bit of a catch-22. We need to do it, but at the same time, it's really hard for us to justify too many overhead positions in the company. So, our biggest constraint is just resources, so people. But what we largely do is it's web-based, so it's SEO, SEM. That's where we spend the most of our money in marketing, and that's really it's all about content. So it's about driving content to our website so that people find us. That's the biggest thing, and that works really well for us. We come up quickly in web searches, which is really important.
Who's your target? Who are you trying to reach?
It varies. Product owners, all the way up to the C-suite. Sometimes a CMO. Sometimes our clients come from the technology side of a company, but largely they're product people, type of people. They're sometimes in the innovation space, and we span all verticals.
You're in the tech industry. I talk to business owners all the time who are just at loose ends over the SEO issue, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out who to trust.
Yeah, you want to hire a really reputable firm, and there's plenty of them out there.
How do you know? How do you find the right one?
Get references. You talk to people who have worked with them, who have had really good results, because it is constantly changing. It's possible you have one or two people who are just, that's all they do is they understand Google, they understand how it's changing, they understand what's happening today and tomorrow. But the best thing is to hire a specialty firm that's all they do, and they're very good at it.
Karen, not to interrupt, but a cheaper alternative that we found is just have a really weird last name. That works great.
Well, my name is a little bit weird, but they're not searching on me. That's the problem. So they're searching on user experience. They're searching on usability, service design, digital transformation, all that kind of stuff. So we have to show up there.
Well, I bring it up because it's what I bang my head against is how much we have to continually accelerate the amount of money we're spending with Google or with Facebook for SEO results. I've told this story before, but I think I bought 300 domain names from GoDaddy. I think I have lifetime platinum status with them forever.
Me too.
Yeah. And I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. And then I hired an SEO firm and said, okay, here's the one thing we're not going to do. We're not going to name the firm after me because I don't want to be the limiting factor. They came back and did all their magic and said, well, here's the thing. Good news, bad news. Good news, we found the right domain name. Bad news, it's your last name. And I'm like, what? And they said, well, your last name is so screwed up that you can misspell it into Google 100 different ways and it'll lead you there. So we went with that and it worked.
Given that advantage, what are you spending money on? What is the challenge that you face improving your SEO?
Two things come to mind. I'm sure there are more than that. And my marketing person could tell you a longer list. But one, we're non-geographic. So, where with Facebook ads particularly, you can do geographic targeting. We're all over the world. And so that makes it a little tough. Secondly, the word for people that we generally place. So we work with all kinds of Christian organizations, whether they're schools or relief organizations or even for-profit businesses, but the backbone of the business is churches hire us to help find their pastor. Well, not everybody calls it a pastor. So you go to the other words and it's like minister. Well, minister is also a political term for minister of defense and the minister of, they're just so broad and scattered that being able to hit top search result, it just gets more and more expensive.
William, when you talk about these keywords, are you talking about words that you use in your content to make sure that you show up in SEO, or are you talking about keywords that you use in pay-per-click advertising to buy ads?
Content. So we're not buying a ton of ads. We'll buy a few, but most of ours, if I heard Karen right, it's content for her as well. And content used to be, my friend and client, Dave Ramsey, the don't have credit cards guy. He used to be, if you Googled the word debt, he was the number one result. And it was back in the day where you could just put debt all the way across the footer of every web page and the spiders would pick up the word debt. And it's not that easy now. And now the spiders are actually reading the content you write to see if they think it's thoughtful enough to hit a result. And I think
well,
Karen's
and not
right.
only that, they're Google will hit you if you don't have a good user experience. Meaning, if you click on something and it doesn't take you to content that's relevant to the word that you clicked on, and that the navigation related to that, if they're not connected to what your search terms are, they'll give you a negative rating.
Yep.
So this is where it helps us in terms of user experience work, and you better make sure that your site is authentic to what you're saying it's doing.
Content length has changed too, hasn't it, Karen? It used to be 100 words was the right length. Now it's like 600 to 800.
One of the problems with pay-per-click is that there's always going to be some idiot that's spending $1 zillion a month that gets the price up there. And if they understood that it wasn't working, they would stop doing it, but they can't because the attribution is so difficult from this stuff. I mean, I'm in an industry, there's a chain of stores that has over 1,000 stores. So they bought the pay-per-click. Do they have any clue if it's working? And my answer is, I don't think so, but they're a multi-billion-dollar company. So what do they care? So all it did is it jacked up the pay-per-click costs. And I don't think it's going to work for anybody at this point.
That is so good, Jay. And it sometimes competitors think that growth is the goal rather than actually doing something that's profitable. So we're just going to get the pay-per-click, but it actually loses money and never.
Right. But in this case, a company does $1 billion a year. Are they going to notice? I know other businesses you look at, a lot of these companies we're dealing with now do nothing but lose money. And that's the furniture business. Wayfair's having an impact. They're doing like $8 billion a year, doing nothing but losing money. But it makes it a difficult environment for everybody else.
The increase in the price of keywords has been going on for, I don't know, at least 5, 6, 7 years. And that's part of the reason that people have turned to content marketing the way you guys do, Karen and William. William, you take a really unusual approach to producing a lot of content. Are you still requiring all of your employees to blog?
We are. When we started in 2008, which would have been right when Twitter hit the scene, was shortly after Facebook was no longer just college campuses. And then I fell into blogging. And I guess the number one rule for blogging is consistency is it, right? And I just didn't have time to do it all the time. So when I hired somebody, I said, hey, go listen to this podcast to this great pastor, break it down, make a listening guide, turn it into a blog post, and here's how you post. I think we were using WordPress at the time. It was, pretty primitive. And he did, and it worked. And so then the next person, we said, well, why don't you do that? And then it just kind of snowballed where we actually put a writing quota on everyone that joined the firm.
Everyone.
And it might be like
the receptionist.
Yes. Poor administrative assistant wrote an article, and you write on what you know. So she's like, how do you be a good administrative assistant? Well, that actually would work because no one trains you how to do that in a church. Unfortunately, she titled the article, and we weren't doing a lot of quality control then, The View from the Back Seat. And that just didn't play real well with church people. So we had to pull that one down. But
couldn't you just change the name?
Exactly. So, we've stubbed our toe quite a bit over the years, but we have found that it's changed who we hire. There have been people that would have been very good at a job, but they aren't willing to or able to put together content, and that just doesn't work for us. But content is king for us.
How much content are you producing?
Oh gosh. Well, so it's changed now. So the definition of content has changed to produce an infographic, produce a blog post, produce a podcast, produce manage our Instagram for this long. So
you're a publisher.
Yeah, it's multifaceted content.
And do you believe that any content is better than none, and even if it's bad?
No.
Who's
so
overseeing this?
That quality.
It's almost all of our marketing work. We do very little marketing outside of that. We don't buy any print ads. We don't do trade shows. We don't, all the normal things that a services industry would do. We just don't do. We do content.
We don't do any of those either.
See, I do all those things. And I can tell you what's changed. And I do trade shows in the framing industry. I've been doing print ads for years. I've done TV for years, radio. And what's happened is people that grew up in a normal business before the computer, they're used to writing a check for the magazine. They're used to writing a check. All of a sudden, a lot of the stuff has turned into salaries for internal people, and they didn't make the change in their head. So they're still budgeting 4% for advertising, but they really should be budgeting 1%, and then 3% should go to some people that work for you that are doing this stuff. So my question to you, William, is who's overseeing all this stuff, all the social media? Do you have a marketing person that making six figures that's overseeing this whole thing?
I do. And they're not doing a whole lot of marketing outside of that. But I'll tell you, Jay, this is not prescriptive for everybody. It's just worked for us. And it is not because William had some grand plan. I totally fell into this. So in our world, there is a very wide gap between what you're taught in seminary and what you have to actually know to run an organization. There are no business classes. There's not even how to run a staff meeting. You exit. I have a master's from Princeton. I know nothing about organizational development from them. I can tell you about St. Augustine. That's really great, but it did no good. So we would put out things like, this sounds so simple, but how do you fire a volunteer? Well, every pastor's like, oh my gosh, no one's ever I don't know how to fire. So when we would do a blog post or email and send it out and see what the click-through rate was, these are old stats, but we were, sold on a software company called HubSpot that we use for our inbound marketing. And when they made their pitch to us, they said, usually you write a post or you put it out in email and the click-through rate's going to be about 1%, which is similar to if you've ever done direct mail. That's kind of what you look for, right?
That would be great.
Yeah. So they said, we can take you to 3%. So we're like, okay, fine. So then they got into our numbers and studied it, and we're writing these blog posts out of a fraternity house. I'm glad OSHA never came over because it was bad. And we were getting a 37% click-through rate. And they came back and said, you should be charging money for this. And we were like, no, it's fine. We're just writing out of the overflow of what we're learning anyway. And it created a loyal tribe. And that was before you had Seth Godin writing about these things. And we didn't even know we were doing it. But there's such a gap in our industry between what you're taught and trained and what you actually have to know to do the job, that we had a very fertile ground for easy blog posts that would be exceedingly helpful. And I don't know, for listeners, maybe you identify the gap. Where is the knowledge gap, and how do you step in with it?
I can tell you the reason the 21 Hats exists is because I'm telling you, if you get a business degree, even today, not 30, 40 years ago, do you think they're teaching kids in college, oh, here's how you fire somebody? Do you think there's a class on that? Do you think there's a class on hiring?
Right. Everyone should go to art school instead, because in art school, they teach you critical thinking, which is all you really need.
I've got a lot of artists working for me. I can tell you that it's a whole other experience.
Karen, you rely on content marketing as well. How do you approach it?
Similar, we have a lot of people in the company writing, and so everyone has their own blog channel essentially, and they can write on topics that are related to their job, related to the world as they see it from being a Blink employee. The quality assurance is there. We have an editor, and we sort of check it. If it's something that's related to the culture of the company or the growth or the vision, then I always check it. But otherwise, it's pretty open and free, and it creates. Our goal is always to teach and provide. Not free advice, but free learnings. Like, here's how we do it. Here's what we learned, and hopefully somebody can benefit from that.
So here's the question: if you had 30 salespeople every month, you have a sales report. You know who the winners are, and you know who the people that aren't selling. Do you have any metric to know what your ROI is on all these people doing this content? Because I have to believe some of them are gifted and great and are driving business, and others are talking to themselves. Do you know which is which?
Yeah, we know whose posts are more successful for sure. Yep.
Well, in our software, Jay, tracks every motion, every movement you make on our website once we have your IP address, and assuming you're using one or two IP addresses between a phone and a tablet or a tablet and a laptop, we can tell where you've been. And so we're scoring articles to see when people read this article, what's the next step they take. And if it's moving them down the funnel towards sale, then it's a higher scoring article. And you bet we're watching that.
What software is that, William? Is that HubSpot?
It's HubSpot. We've had a very good experience with them. I think there are cheaper alternatives.
This is going to surprise a lot of people. Only 1% of businesses that start ever end up with 100 employees. Only 1% in America. That's what the number is. And I believe that to be true. So most of the people listening right now do not have hundreds of employees. They've got 10, they've got 5, 20, whatever it is. How does a smaller business that's doing $2 million a year, $5 million, how do they navigate this without that six-figure marketing person that works for them? And do either of you have an answer for that? Because Jay, I certainly don't.
I'll tell you now, the world has changed in the 11 years we've been doing this. But when we started, I didn't have any six-figure anybody. In fact, maybe we were making 200,000 gross top line a year. And we hired HubSpot, which is, it's a scaled to service sort of deal. How large is your email list? And so if you're small, it's fine. And their whole premise, and not to turn this into a commercial about them, but the whole premise of inbound marketing is to allow the little guy to compete on the same field as the big guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the quality of content coupled with the right software can help somebody on any scale budget compete at the same level as a Coca-Cola or one of the larger companies.
I have a hard time believing that. I have a hard time believing that someone can compete with a Coca-Cola that's got 40 people working in their digital department. That's a little hard for me to get my arms around.
Well, if they're trying to make a soda, then maybe you're right. But I'm saying smaller businesses, which tend to be niche, can compete with. They don't have to hire a bunch of marketing people if they do good content and have the right software. I don't know. Karen, you're the software person. Tell me.
Well, all I can say is that how the world has changed and that everybody uses the web to find what they need. So it's not, there aren't a whole bunch of channels you need to focus on. It's one. And, Google is a verb. That's what you need to focus on. So it's a lot more streamlined and a lot more, clear and specific in terms of user behavior for what we know. If somebody wants to know, I'm sure even for you, Jay, that where should I get my picture framed, they'll do a web search.
Okay, I need to challenge what you just said. You just said, quote unquote, everyone uses the web and you only need one place to advertise. And that is absolutely not true. It's largely true. It's a lot true. But the fact is, if you're in a retail business, it still matters having a storefront where you got to be. And you can't just rely on the web to do that, or nobody would have a decent spot anymore. They would all take spaces in industrial parks and just use the web to drive their business to it.
We have a beautiful office for that very same reason. So they come here, there's a real physical experience. But how we in our business get 95%, all of our new leads, yep. And then we have referrals and we have repeat clients. Everything new comes through the web. Period.
For your business, I'm just saying I'm sure that's true for you. I'm saying that doesn't work for all businesses.
What I hear Karen saying is you don't have to think about radio, TV, print, and there's one front door to every business now, and it's the internet. And I would totally agree with Karen on that.
Oh my God, that is so. You are both in your niche busises, and you.
Well, so are you, Jay.
No, I'm not. I got 3 different businesses that go everywhere from retail to direct sales. So I have a wider view of the world.
So are you saying that your customers find you because they walk down the street and they happen to see you?
Of course, absolutely. You don't think most retail
they didn't do a search and then go walk into your office after they found the address and what time you're open?
I actually have statistics because think about it. I have to get their name and number. So it's an unusual retail business. I actually have every single customer. They walk in. I can immediately see whether they were here or not. And I can ask them, oh, you're not in our computer. Where did you hear about us? And I can tell you it falls into 4 buckets. It's either they're a repeat customer, 2, referrals way bigger than anything else, way bigger. Drive-by and the web, and I will tell, or in advertising, and I will tell you, there's no question that the web has gotten more and more popular and is actually probably bigger than the drive-by now, but it's still up in the game. But you can't take drive-by. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, speaking in absolutes, that it's the only thing you can do.
You said exactly what I said, which is we get our customers from referral, repeat clients, and the web. And we don't get drive-bys. I'll give you that. We get no drive-bys.
My point. There's people that are in the retail business. I would tell someone going into business, first and foremost, especially in picture framing, get a location that people can see your store, because everyone doesn't do picture framing regularly, and you regularly need to be seen. You can't. These people that think they're going to quote unquote save money by getting some off street usually go broke, because a good storefront pays for itself. So it's not 100%, but I'm not arguing the web is a critical major force these days, but it hasn't taken everything else out. You'll notice that Amazon is on TV, Amazon's on radio. I mean, radio's not dead. It's hurt, but it's not dead. There's still plenty of print advertising. It's not all gone. It's not like everything now is just the web.
Can you do those other things and not be on the web?
It would be stupid to. I mean, yeah, I would say you certainly could, but it wouldn't be smart. No, I do think you do need the web presence to go with it. And I wouldn't argue if you said the web has probably, let's use the word probably, turned into one of the a major way of getting people into your business. But in a retail setting, retail still needs a good location, and it's still worth paying for the good location.
Totally agree with you, Jay. I just know that when I have a need, like recently framing pictures, I just Yelped picture framing places, and I live around 4 of them. I know where they all are. So I Yelped it, and I looked at reviews, and I kind of did a little Google search, and I read about it. I did price comparisons before I got there. So, 10 years ago, I would have walked in and said, please educate me on frames. Now I think probably customers are walking in pretty dang educated, and it's all through internet.
Some, except this always reminds me of when McGovern lost against Nixon, and the famous writer Pauline, I think Keel, said, I can't believe that McGovern lost. Everyone I know voted for him. You're in the computer. You're both heavily using computers. So just because the fact that you use the computer and you always Yelp everyone before you go doesn't mean that everyone else is, because they're not.
Don't you think this might say something about the age of your audience? Because I think that the younger the audience, the more clearly correct William
Lauren,
is.
I'm interrupting here because I would say average customer age, I got all of y'all beat. I'm working with churches. We are not a young market. So, my normal buyer is older and will oftentimes mail in their contract snail mail and want me to return a snail mail signed copy. And then we say, how'd you find out about it? So they say, oh, Google search.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just suggesting Google search does not turn into 100% of people that go shopping for anything are going to Google search. In some businesses, it's probably clothes. My guess is in clothes, the retail storefront in the mall or on the street is still getting most of their business from people walking by or referrals. I don't think they're Googling clothes. But in some businesses like yours, it might be 100% from the web. In other businesses, maybe it's 20%, but it's not all, or it's all over the place. And I have the numbers from my own business. I can tell you, I get far more business from referrals than I get from the web. Though I will tell you, for the first time in 41 years, the web now is bringing in more business than the drive-by. That doesn't mean I shouldn't have a good location, though, because, they work together.
Fair enough. But nobody's arguing about your location. That you have to have a place for them to go. I mean, we spend majority of our monthly nut is spent on our rent here. We have a beautiful office. It's very important.
But you're not paying extra to be on a major street to be visible to the public, I assume.
No.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. The incremental difference between paying $20 a foot to have a nice office that looks good, to paying $42 a foot because it's worth being out there is it's advertising. And I could show someone easily, let's say you have a 2,000 foot store. If you paid $12 a foot more, it's $24,000 a year in rent. That's nothing in advertising dollars. So that is the cheapest form of advertising you could ever do when you're in a retail business. Pay more money for rent and get more bodies walking by. And people frequently go for the cheaper rent because they think their nut's lower, and it's a bad way to save money.
I want to hit a couple of news items before we have to go. One is there's been a lot of stories lately. One municipality after another has passed a law requiring that employers not ask job candidates about their salary history. And the purpose of this, obviously, it's well intended. It's meant to make sure that men and women are treated fairly in the way they are paid. But it does create a dilemma for employers, or it can. And I'm curious how each of you have handled this. Has it been an issue for any of you?
Lauren, what do you think the dilemma is?
Oh, I can tell you. You're looking for a graphic designer and you've got a candidate and you don't know whether this person is junior and making $42,000 a year or whether they are real experienced and make $83,000 a year. And frequently what someone was making at their last job gives you a pretty good indication of, like, if someone's making $83,000, they're probably going to have a skill set more than someone who's making 40. So it just makes it a little more difficult to try to assess a candidate because you don't know what someone else valued them at their last job.
It should be irrelevant. That what somebody pays somebody and it can be entirely different than what you pay. Why can't you write a very clear job description, interview the person for their skills, make a clear judgment as to whether they can complete the skills and do the job, and then pay them what you're willing to pay for that level of skill?
For instance, they could bring you a great portfolio, but somebody else could have done half of it. You have no way of knowing it. So it's not.
Oh, you have lots of ways of knowing it. You do reference checks. You look. You have them.
Well, certainly. I'm not saying the law is horrible. I'm not saying that there wasn't a reason for it. I'm just saying it does take away one more way of trying to evaluate a candidate, or to figure out, gee, if I pay them X dollars, are they going to be happy because they were, maybe they're out of work at the moment and they're taking a pay cut. I usually would be hesitant to pay someone a lot less than they were making at their last job.
But that would be up to them.
Won't that come out if you offer them a salary that's lower than they've been making?
Absolutely not. They're desperate. They need to find a job. They just turned 54. They're worried about getting a job. So they're going to take this until they can find something better because they got to pay their mortgage. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to take the job.
So what we do is we have very clear requirements as to what's in the job description, and we take out anything that's not a requirement so that we're not limiting who's applying for the job, for one. And then we give them the salary range in the first call. So when we have our first screening call, we let them know what the range is for this position so they're well aware of what we're offering. And we don't ask them what they're making before, because what somebody else is willing to pay somebody, A, it's none of our business, and B, it might be entirely different than our values of what we think we should be paying our people. We do a lot of research in the market before we post a position to make sure that we are within the range that's industry standard for the skills that we're requiring. But I think it's absolutely mostly none of our business what they're making before. And if somebody is coming in and they are able to do the skills that's required for a job and the pay is way more or less in some cases, that's up to them to decide, and they deserve to make more money if they're doing a different job. Most importantly, it's perpetuating pay inequality, which is the major problem.
I'm conflicted on this. I try and get my head around, because we deal with it arguably more than either of the other two of you. I mean, we deal with it every day. We're trying to assess candidates and whether they fit in markets, and then you want to get into crazy pay scales. Glassdoor doesn't work for churches because churches have all these non-cash compensations, and it's very complex. So
what's a non-cash compensation?
They're going to lease a car for you. The kids get to go to the church school for free. It's a taxable fringe benefit. It's arguably the most complex variance of types of compensation I've ever seen, and it's so. I'm conflicted. On the one hand, completely agree with Karen. The inequity in pay around gender and age is ridiculous, and it needs to be addressed. On the other hand, all this time that you're spending interviewing candidates who might not want to be a part of your job at all, or you might rule them out based on what they're paying. You're wasting time, which is wasting money, which is wasting value for the company.
Yeah, but you don't need to ask them what they made before. Why don't you just ask them what they want to make in this role? Just change the question.
ZipRecruiter does that. It says that's what we use. We use ZipRecruiter, and you put in there this job. What are you looking for? And they tell us, so we know whether we should pursue it or not.
Right.
Yeah. So, there's having done over 10,000 face-to-face interviews. One thing I've found is you ask somebody what they're getting paid. Okay, it would be nice to know so you can trim things down. But on the other hand, all they're doing is self-reporting. There's no way to know whether it's right or not.
Well, that's not true. I've had cases where I've heard of people doing it that they ask for a W-2. I mean, you can't ask them.
You can't do that.
I do know people have done that, but the point is you could also call the reference and say, she said she was making $62,000. Does that sound right?
No, I hear you, Jay. I guess what I'm saying is, I'm always looking for ways to do triage in interviewing. You need to take your time interviewing, but you don't need to waste your time. So if you've got a $60,000 pastor position and you're talking to somebody who's currently making 100 and barely making it work financially, yeah, I guess for the ministry or whatever, they can drop a 40% pay cut, but probably not. So why are we wasting our time? So on the one hand, the efficiency of being able to find things out. On the other hand, Karen, I agree with you. There are other ways to figure that out. And I don't think the pay inequity should be the only motivation for not asking. With Glassdoor and everything else that's out there, you should be able to figure out, are you paying fairly or not?
William, are you subject to these laws at the moment?
Depends on what state.
What about for your company?
We're in Texas.
Now, if I'm no regulations, right?
It's dependent on where the person is working that you're asking. So if I'm interviewing Karen and she's in Seattle, I cannot ask, right, even if she's coming to work here.
If you can ask, do you ask, William?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you just ask what they need to make or what they want to make?
I have a different agenda than 99% of all people asking that question. I'm gathering data on what everybody's getting paid in a sector where there is no gathered data. So anytime I can get data, I want.
Wait, I have to tell you something. That's I do the same thing. I want to know what the average frame shop's paying someone. So that you're not the only one that's trying to figure out what a market is. So here's what I think we can reframe this. Excuse my pun. I assume all of us will agree this should help the pay inequity thing, and it's an important problem. Okay, yes. No problem. Okay, I don't have any argument with that. I'm just adding, it certainly can be helpful to know what they were making, and I'll put up with it because I have no choice.
The law for my work is a bit of a pain in the butt, but I think given what I see, and this isn't even gender or age inequity. I work largely with nonprofits, and their goal is to spend as little money as possible. So if I can find out that Lauren's only pulling $75 a year, where I was going to pay $100, I can knock it down to $79, and he feels great. I hate that. That's ridiculous.
We got to stop in a moment, but I want to come back to Karen. After all this back and forth, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, can you sum up this conversation for us? Just the conversation about pay equity and asking this question: what's your salary history? What do you take from this conversation?
Oh, I think it's unnecessary, and I think again I can see the difference in that there's a lot of data out in the marketplace about what people in my industry make or what the averages are. The trouble is we have all of the big tech firms who blow it all up, right? I mean, we're Amazon, Microsoft, you name it, they're all in our backyard, Facebook there, and they blow up the average salary. So what we do is we talk about in that early interview, this is the range, this is the expectation for the job. And then we let them say, well, that's in my range or out of my range. And right away, we go no further or we carry on depending on what they say. But I think it's extremely important if we're going to make a change in pay equity to stop right now asking what people made before. It's the number one thing that shows in the research that makes a difference. So we just have to do it.
Let's leave it there. We hit a lot of great topics. I have a feeling we're going to come back to all of these. Thank you guys for your time today. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Remember, if you liked what you heard, tell your friends, tell your enemies, subscribe, like us, and best of all, connect with us. Follow us on Twitter at 21_hats and visit us at 21hats.com. Let us know what questions or issues you'd like to hear our panel of fearless business owners address. See you next time.